Hello, my name is Hylian Knights, and I'll be sharing how to play Naval with you today. The ship can be controlled with the W, A, S, and D keys, along with the halt command. W and S can be used to control the ship's throttle, while A and D are used to move the ship left or right. The halt command can be found in the movement section of controls and is used to quickly stop the ship. This is best used near capture points when you need to make small adjustments. Some weapon types will not be automatically set to keys when starting Naval. These can be set by going to Controls, Naval, and Weaponry. It is best to leave gunners to target both air and surface targets. This can be toggled with the E key. Repairs in Naval are split between Fire Extinguisher, Toolkit, and Unwatering. These repair options can be set to automatically activate when damage is received by double tapping the key that activates the given repair. A small A will appear next to the icon at the bottom of the screen when automatic repairs are enabled. Crew skills and modules can shorten the time repairs are needed to be dealt with. When multiple repairs are activated at the same time, a penalty will be applied, causing all repairs to take longer. It is recommended to only apply one repair at a time to avoid this penalty. The most important control to have enabled in Naval is the mouse wheel distance correction. This can be accessed in Controls, Naval, Camera Control, and then choosing Distance Correction under the mouse wheel tab. There is another way to enable distance correction, Controls, but if you enable this with the mouse wheel and that set of controls, they will impact each other and cause issues. It is best to just use mouse wheel distance correction. Float planes are planes carried by cruisers that can be launched with the U key. When you press U, the float plane catapult will start to move freely with a gray line. When that line is moved over to the side of the ship, it will turn blue, indicating that the float plane is able to be launched. When launched, float planes have the ability to cap points, lay a smoke screen with the Alt plus G keys, and continue a circular heading with the H key. It is important to note for the smoke screen that the plane needs to stay under 50 meters in order to lay it. Targets can be selected using the middle mouse button after they're in the player's field of view. The player can choose to have targets automatically locked after being inside of the player's field of view for a short time. This option can lead to issues if multiple targets are in the player's field of view. Automatic target lock can be found in the Naval section of options. Crew skills can be prioritized based on the ship commander, damage control, boiler room, gunners, and then the rest. It is best to prioritize the ship commander and damage control as they greatly increase your survivability in game. Both of these allow your repairs to be shortened and for you to take more damage overall. The gunners are important to max out on the main caliber reload speed and for the time fuse distance set. This will greatly increase your anti-air protection if you have to rely on HETF rounds. Shells can be divided into two categories: armor piercing and high explosive. Armor piercing and semi-armor piercing rounds are used to hit modules deep on a ship or behind armored compartments. Armor piercing rounds are better for hitting deeper into an armored ship because of its better armor penetration, while semi-armor piercing rounds are better against weaker armored ships because of an increase in failure. High explosive is used for attacking modules on the deck or unarmored ships. They are best used to focus on hitting bridges and turrets when a ship is only showing its bow or stern. High explosive has two additional anti-aircraft round types: high explosive variable time fuse and high explosive time fuse. HEVT works by self-detonating based on proximity to an aircraft. acts as normal HE against surface targets, and is easy to use manually. High explosive time fuse rounds explode after timers set by the crew members. It is ineffective against surface targets because shells will explode before making contact with an enemy vessel, and they are overall less reliable to use and best left for the AI to control. Secondary weapons are additional weapons that you can take on board the ship. These include torpedoes, depth charges, mines, mortars, and rockets. It is best to be cautious of what extra armament you take with you because armament such as torpedoes and depth charges have a chance of exploding if they are hit by an enemy shell. Torpedoes are tools used to deal massive damage from a distance and allow ships to fight above their weight class if used correctly. Ship-launched torpedoes can be set to a depth stroke of either 1 meter or 4 meter in the spawn menu. It is advisable to set the depth stroke to 4 meter when fighting cruisers and battleships, as a 1 meter depth stroke torpedo will do minimal damage when hitting the armored belts of these targets. Pressing Q will allow you to select an individual torpedo. The selected torpedo will have its trajectory highlighted in green. If you do not select an individual torpedo before firing, all of the torpedoes will be fired at once. Depth charges are canisters that act like bombs when dropped in the water. They are best used in coastal vehicles that can get closer to larger vessels before being spotted. Mines are objects dropped from ships that will explode when an enemy vessel makes contact with the mine. They are useful for denying a capture point or a route for an enemy ship. It is important to take note that it is not advisable to take mines on blue water ships as they cannot get into positions to really use these weapons, and they act as massive ammo racks on the deck if they are hit. So it is best to try and save these weapon types for coastal vehicles that can get to points easier. Rockets, mortars, and missiles are used to send explosive ordnance towards a target. One of the more common mortar systems in Naval consists of rocket motors strapped to depth charges. These weapons allow smaller ships to inflict massive damage to other vessels from behind cover. Missiles are currently limited to select vehicles and most useful as anti-aircraft weapons, but can be used to do accurate damage to smaller ships. Weapon groups can be divided into primary, secondary, and tertiary armament. These different sets of weapon groups consist of your main armament, your secondary armament, and your anti-aircraft guns. These groups can either be set to their own keybinds or accessed through the Y multifunction menu. Players aim using the cursor to control their selected weapon group. When controlling ships, a player's selected weapon group will have all their turrets point where the player's cursor and distance correction are set to. Distance correction can be used to get the distance shells will land. The fire control room and fire director modules come together to show the player a locked target's expected position when shells fired will hit. This is represented in the HUD by a green chevron. If you and your opponent's ship don't change heading, a salvo fired at this green chevron will hit the center of the hull. If your fire control room and fire director modules are knocked out, you will lose access to the chevron and will have to manually aim. And that is all you need to know in order to play Naval. Naval is an incredibly easy game mode to play. It just takes effort to learn and time spent playing.